Hello, Em. How are you doing? Emily Claire Trujillo McFarlane. How are you doing? So, good morning. Today is Monday, the 15th of October, 2018. And welcome. Thank you for deciding to click on the link. And hopefully, while we're together, we can share a little time together, communing with one another, connecting with one another, being in each other's presence, offering each other attention, maybe nourishing each other with sort of our interaction and healing each other and relieving any wounds that we happen to have. So anyway, I'm glad to be with you here today, and things are good this morning. Things are really good. It's the 15th of October, and guess what? I bought a knit hat. I went to Dick's Sporting Goods last night, and I picked up a hat that I really like. So I'm really preparing for this winter weather in October, and things are coming together, and I'm glad to see it. So one of the first things I'd like to do is read Peaceful Living by Mary Mackenzie, and we'll get off on the right step. So instead of reading today's passage, I'm going to read a previous passage that we've missed. I haven't been able to read every passage on the day that it is to be read because, I've some here and there I've skipped a few days or I've done other things. And so I think today's a makeup day. And so I'm going to read a passage from October 8th. So here it goes. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail, by Abraham Maslow. Well, let me just mention something about this quote. This quote, I think, is really true. And it's true in a lot of ways. It's true metaphorically. Sometimes I talk about how our life is just projection, how we just continually project, say, the material that we're dealing with in our mind onto our external reality. In a way, that's the way I see this quote. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. The material that you're focused on in the moment is how you manage the world around you. It's what's available in your mind. And you may have a certain skill set, and you bring that skill set to every problem that arises in your life. And you can only use that skill set. Now, unless you're introduced to different skills, different ideas, then the chances are very low that you'll use any different set of ideas. So that's part of the reason we're always trying to improve, trying to sort of widen our skill set, widen our abilities, so that we can bring the appropriate tool to each task that is before us. So Abraham Maslow, in fact, this quote is a quote that I think of a lot when I read the news or read books or have conversations with people. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. It's kind of interesting how our tools and our skills are sort of the way they describe a way to interact with the world. They describe an approach. And, we so readily as human beings sort of fall into this habit of the same approach toward problems or other people or relationships. And it's pretty interesting. If you think about it, it's all that we can do. It's like determinism. You know, you're trained and conditioned in a certain way, and if that way is successful, then you adopt that way, and for every future problem or situation that arises, you use the same approach that you've learned. That's why school is so important. That's why widening out and taking a lot of different classes is important, getting a lot of different perspectives. I talk about the multi-theoretical perspective. It's important to acknowledge and understand a lot of different theories, and their importance in life, so that you can apply them as appropriate. So having this varied approach to life, getting a lot of inputs from your environment, finding a lot of successful strategies is really helpful, because that will help you apply the right strategy to the right situation. So you're not locked into just one single tool to solve a problem, because with a limited number of tools, you'll be effective in a limited number of ways. So that's why school is so important, and education and being open to learning, because it'll just help you be more effective in the world, and that's what we all want, right? Greater effectiveness, so that our needs can be met, and we can lead lives that we're proud of, lead lives that are valuable, lead lives that give us joy and happiness and help us flourish. All right, so let's read what Mary McKenzie has to say about Abraham Maslow's quote. So Mary McKenzie's passage begins with the subtitle, Expanding Your Communication Skills, or Expanding Your Communication Tools. I've been creating a series of web courses lately. When I first started the project, I had never experienced a web course, nor did I ever have the vaguest idea of how to create one. I had to learn a whole new set of tools, vocabulary, and materials. I could have avoided learning all this new stuff by deciding not to create the web courses, but in order to meet my need for success, I expanded my skills and knowledge. The same is true of relationships. If you are in a relationship with someone and your limited skills don't help you to meet your need for connection, intimacy, or fun, look for new skills. Expand your toolbox. Different situations call for different resources. If you only have a few choices, you will shortchange yourself and your relationship. Nonviolent communication is one tool that can help you gain relationship skills. It has transformed thousands of relationships around the world. So today's thought for the day is, for today, consider whether your relationship skills are adequate to meet your needs. If they are not, consider learning something new. So I think that's valuable. And, who of us can say that we are wholly satisfied about the status of our relationships? I would say that very few of us can say that. And so what that means is that, I think there's this growth mindset that is natural when it comes to relationships. And, I think it's probably good advice to figure out ways early on in all your relationships to explore ways of learning together new communication skills, ways to develop new communication skills. In fact, that's something that I did with your mom too, and when we were both married. When we were courting, one thing we did is we read relationship books together. Read a couple of them. we would read them out loud, paragraph by paragraph, and we'd have discussions about them. I think that really set us up on a positive footing, on a good footing. And then later on, although later on we did it a little bit, but we didn't do it as much. We would try things every once in a while that were rather new. For example, I remember one time I wanted to use a mind map I wanted to do a mind map together. And a mind map is like it's like a drawing that on a sheet of paper you write this web of information that relates to your conversation. It's essentially a summary of ideas that you've discussed. It's a way of putting these ideas on paper in real time. And I forget what it was we were doing. I think Sheila and I we just sat on the couch and I brought a very large piece of paper and on a tablet or something, and then we just went to town drawing the mind map. And I think it was helpful in getting us to sort through our ideas about solving problems related to, I think it was the future, or maybe it was just the status of our relationship or something like that. I forget what the details of the mind map were, but I remember feeling really encouraged while we were doing it and at the end of it. And I also felt really effective in our life, that we were doing the right thing. And so I had a lot of positive feelings related to that, because it was solving my needs for harmony and planning, and it was really nurturing for both of us to really take some time out and exercise some care about what the future holds. And I also was pleased by it being so organized, and I felt like there was a lot of agreement at the time. So, it's kind of what I suggest for your relationships in the future, Emily, is that, you might think about things that you can do to introduce more of a some new ways to analyze problems, whether it be mind maps or STEM sentences, or I don't know, maybe even reading a book together. I think these techniques are ways to get on the same page with your partner, and I think they could be really valuable in friendships too. Absolutely. Friends are people you spend a lot of time with. And, I think it's good to spend some time asking questions about what you each want to get out of the interaction together. You can make some requests that help make those interactions more pleasant, more pleasurable. And you can also sort of explore the desires and needs of your partner so that you can better understand them and better fulfill their need for connection and friendship. And so anyway, I admit it takes a little bit of courage to do something different like that, but there are true benefits that I think can be reaped from taking a little extra time and spending it with your friends. So very nice. Thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate the extra input there. All right, so let's move along to the questions on the Kindle. Let's see what's going on. All right, so question number 33 is, what was your favorite subject in school? Well, that's a really good question. I think I had different favorites all throughout school. For example, I remember in middle school, One of my favorite classes was Mrs. Lee. She was, I think, my homeroom teacher. She was my science teacher. And I remember vividly studying atoms and being captivated by atoms in her class. And I remember memorizing the electron orbit shells and their names like 2s or P, you know. And I remember just how much I really enjoyed that class. She talked about PAPOC, which was her way of abbreviating the scientific method. It was like a plan, procedure, observations, conclusions. I can't believe I even remember what. I can't even believe, personally, I can't even believe that I remember PAPOC. That was, I think, what I liked about that word was that it was sort of like onomatopoeia, where it sounded like a chicken, and that just made it sort of funny and humorous. And I don't know, it tickled my fancy at the time. And how funny it was that that acronym, described something essential about the scientific method. So, you know, so I think I could probably attribute Mrs. Lee, I guess she was my fifth grade teacher. No, maybe she was sixth. No, you know what? I think she was my seventh grade teacher. I think I can attribute my seventh grade teacher as at least starting my interest in science. For me back then, my interest in science was it was about wonder. It was about questioning. It was about getting an understanding of the mystery of the world. And it was about integrating one truth with other truths. Like, I would take a class in science, and then I would take another class, and anyway, I would learn facts they would integrate together, and they would those separate facts from two separate sources would integrate together and provide insight that I could use to help explain the world around me. And I was just enamored by it. I was so enamored by it. I remember I had an English class. Mr. Torres was his name. That was my instructor's name. And he actually married the Land O'Lakes lady who was a model for Land O'Lakes butter. Anyway, what I remember about his class is and this was still seventh grade, he wanted us to write an essay about any subject we wanted. And I ended up writing an essay about the 3 laws of thermodynamics in my English class. That was the subject that I chose. So you could tell already that I was really captivated by science by 7th grade. If I'm writing an English essay, a paper about the 3 laws of thermodynamics, that is a kid who's inspired by science right there. We did other things in that English class. I remember that were also quite valuable. For example, we memorized the Greek letters of the alphabet. That came in handy many years later when I was in high school and college, learning the Greek letters in mathematics and in my physics courses. So I really appreciate learning the Greek alphabet. That was a really great idea. And there was also another thing that I learned in my 7th grade English class that I enjoyed, and that was this idea of memorizing poetry and how valuable it can be. I remember I memorized Robert Frost's poem about 2 roads diverged in a wood. And now, I didn't do a very good job memorizing that poem. In fact, I could tell early on, as early as 7th grade, that I was really challenged, having difficulty memorizing material. My memory skills were just not up to par. I did struggle with memorizing the poetry that was assigned, and that wasn't the only poem that we memorized. We memorized a number of them, and I found that my memory recitation was pretty slow, and there was a lot of frustration in me. I guess I just wasn't devoting the time to it. I didn't recognize how much time I needed to spend. I also don't think that I was very methodical in my memorization. I mean, these days when I look back, I can recognize a lot of opportunities for how I could improve my ability to memorize. Hey Emily, I was thinking too about a conversation that we had. This we talked briefly about drama and how you're not taking a drama class this semester. And one thing you referenced when you talked to me about that was that you said that you had difficulty memorizing the lines. And let me tell you, I could really relate to that. I memorizing the lines of poetry and of plays as something that sort of dogged me for years. And that's part of the reason that I've been intrigued and interested in learning about memorization techniques. And I've shared some of those techniques with you by sending you a CD-ROM program that I think White was his name, Mr. White. He's a memory master, right? He's in these memory Olympics, and he's got a lot of ideas about how to memorize stuff. You know, I don't know if you went through that program or how carefully you studied it. I went through it myself. I might even go through it a second time because, you know, memorization is a critical skill. It can help you in all areas of your life. And anyway, I just wanted to say that I could relate to you and the problems you were having with memorization. It's, when you want to memorize something and you can't, it's frustrating. And, what I've learned later is that it has a lot to do, how well you memorize something has a lot to do with the technique that you use. It has very little to do with, say, your brain. Generally, I found that brains work pretty well. If you can think well enough to go about your daily life without a lot of struggle, then you're definitely smart enough to memorize the lyrics to a song, or the lines of a poem, or the lines of a play. And maybe one of these days we can get together and talk a little bit about memorization techniques. And I'd love to pick your brain about what are your ideas about memorization and what you find difficult or what you find easy. Because I like to share some breakthroughs that I've had relating to memory, particularly ideas such as scheduled rehearsal. Anyway, we can talk about memorization. But what we were talking about were my favorite classes in school. So science, and I also briefly mentioned my English class. So science and English have always been interests of mine. And I can say that is where, those are where my interests lie when it came to my classes. Like, for example, I was in honors English all through high school. And so I've got a lot of memories about being around this select group of highly intelligent young people as they talked about books that we were reading, like Moby Dick and things like that in my English classes. Now, that's not to say that I breezed through my classes. In fact, quite often I struggled. I didn't get the best grades sometimes. In fact, there was a time when I remember it was during the transition between my freshman and sophomore years of high school, where I think I was challenged to leave honors English. by my teacher. But somehow I stuck in there and stayed in the class. And I seemed to do well throughout my junior and senior years. I mean, sophomore, junior, and senior years. So I guess it was the right choice, but it wasn't easy for me. I think part of the reason that it wasn't easy for me was it was grammar. I struggled with grammar, and for some reason, it just wasn't important to me to learn the rules of grammar and even punctuation. These ideas did not come easy to me. They were a real challenge for me to integrate, and I had a hard time just identifying the ideas that were important, and even identifying patterns in punctuation. I just wasn't skilled in doing that, and so I kind of struggled. But you know what? I do recognize that I did have a natural facility with English and learning, sort of, at least reading the language and speaking the language. Analyzing the language, not so much. Now that I think about it, we never really did parse sentences in high school. I think we might have done that just a little bit, but we never did sort of take a sentence and sort of dissect it. I mean, we did it a little bit, of course, but maybe I was absent during that time at school. That's probably what happened. So anyway, now how about in college? My favorite classes in college. Well, I learned a lot in my physics classes. I wouldn't necessarily say that my favorite classes were math, although I did have a few enjoyable math classes. You end up taking enough math classes in college. You end up finding what you like. Like, I remember I really enjoyed my linear algebra class. And I had some physics classes that I enjoyed. I particularly liked the subject of special and general relativity. Those are some of my most favorite subjects that I enjoyed having. I also loved biology. I thought that biology was amazing. I liked chemistry, but chemistry I found to be too difficult. Chemistry was such a challenge to me. There were so many details and subtleties. I might just not have spent a lot of time thinking about my chemistry class and the material in it. But I can definitely remember enjoying biology, and in biology lab in particular. I remember we were doing things like extracting DNA, and we were working with plants and genetics. And even though I might not have pretty much appreciated and understood all that went on in my biology class, I really can say that I enjoyed it and that I loved it. In fact, in high school, one of my favorite classes was my biology class. I remember at Del Norte High School, one of my teachers was Mr. Grisham. He was my biology class. And we did all kinds of things, like we had eggs that hatched in an incubator, and we also did, at the time we did some a dissection of some animals that were already dead. At the time I was just fascinated by it, and it was pretty amazing to say, look at the eggs of a fish. Yeah, I have vivid memories of my partner. Her last name was Vermillion. I think her name was Terry Vermillion. It's kind of interesting that I can even remember that. But I remember biology lab in high school. It was really good. I still remember a lot of ideas from taking biology in high school. In fact, that reminds me, I should take a biology class here at Allen Hancock College. I really need to upgrade my understanding about the life sciences. I think that would be really helpful. I just need to for me though, it's going to require buckling down and to do a science class like that. Anyway, I think it'll be worth it. So A question you might ask are, what are the classes that I've been enjoying lately? Because I still take classes. I take a college class. I'm taking 3 college classes this semester at Allen Hancock College. And last year I took 2 classes. Last summer I took a class. So I take, between 1 and 3 classes a semester still. So what classes do I enjoy? Well, I think my favorite class that I've enjoyed lately was an early childhood education class. Positive Child Guidance was the name of that class. I really liked the instructor. I felt he was enjoyable to listen to, and I learned a lot. Now, the textbook was, in my view, not as good as it could be. And for me, when it comes to learning, the textbook is everything. I mean, it's not everything, but it's a lot. I like to have well-structured, well-put together textbooks because that's how I learn, really. I enjoy lectures and taking notes, but really the real learning for me takes place when I read the chapter. And that's something I found really valuable. And my early childhood education class did not have a great textbook, in my opinion. But I really did enjoy the classroom time we had together. Let's see what else. What other classes have I really enjoyed? Oh, my geology class. I really love my geology class. I learned so much about plate tectonics and minerals and gems and things like mudslides, like mass wasting and erosion and weathering and earthquakes and lakes, rivers, and streams and the topography. And we also learned about map reading and using all kinds of neat tools. And I don't know, I was really enjoying my geology class. And one thing I neglected to do when I was taking my geology class was taking a field trip, a geology field trip. So maybe in the future I'll take some time out and take a geology field trip. That might be a good idea. So anyway, I guess that's enough for that. But those are my classes that I liked. As you can tell, there's an assortment of classes related to developmental psychology for children. There's classes related to science, like I mentioned, biology and physics. I've mentioned a math class I really enjoyed. I don't know. I'm usually able to extract good experiences from all of my classes. I remember taking an art class. I think it was just Introduction to Art 101. I tell you, that was great. I loved the instructor. I loved the material that we studied. I loved memorizing the artworks. And I was so happy to get to know about the themes, just the different art styles as they developed over the years, in the United States and globally. And I don't know, it was really stimulating and a really challenging course, and I really loved it. I'm still using a lot of tools when I look at a piece of art that I learned in that class, about color and contrast and I don't know, all kinds of things like that. So loved it. There's a lot to love in classes, and as you can tell, I'm still passionate about education. All right. So, question number 34 is, do you believe in psychic abilities? And my answer to that is easy. It's an easy answer, and it's no. No, I don't believe in psychic abilities. I don't believe in ESP or telekinesis or anything related to that. What I have been noticing and learning and acknowledging is that the human brain is encased in a skull. And, there are only a few holes in the skull, and they're often the sensory organs, right? That's how information gets into the brain. And the information that's transmitted outwards, well, that's our behavior, right? The behavior that we exhibit. And here's the thing, it's just, there's no, wouldn't it be great if there was such a thing as psychic ability? But I think that it's often just wishful thinking on the part of people who feel powerless in the world. I think of it as kind of a fantastical thinking. And, it is disappointing to learn. It is actually quite disappointing to learn that psychic abilities don't exist. It's fun to pretend that they do. It really is. It's interesting to me how religion is really steeped in this idea that psychic abilities exist. This idea of the supernatural, and there's the how we can talk with our thoughts between our minds and the supernatural. That's all like a psychic ability connection right there. There's a real connection between the fantasy of psychic abilities and the fantasy of the supernatural ideas, of ideas about the supernatural. They're basically one and the same. It's about non-acceptance of reality is what it is. It's sort of like a battle with reality. And, wouldn't it be great if psychic abilities existed? It would make life so much easier, right? I think psychic ability appeals to sort of human beings' desire to sort of conserve energy. It's like the remote control and how wonderful the remote control is. It's as if the remote control is like this magic wand that can turn the channels on a television set, so I don't have to get up and do it. A remote control is like magic. It's like having psychic ability, but of course, as we know, it's not. It's just physics. And so, no, I don't believe in psychic abilities. And the only reason I don't believe in psychic abilities is because there's no evidence to believe that there's psychic abilities. There's not even a little bit of evidence, which is funny. There's not even a little bit of evidence. And you know what? There's not even a little bit of evidence that the supernatural world exists. I wish I didn't have to say that, but there's not even a little bit of evidence. And when I'm talking about evidence, I'm talking about clinical studies. Studies that are reproducible by other countries and other communities and other people. All right, so what's next? Oh, question number 35. Do you believe in the paranormal? Well, I just discussed that. No, I don't. And psychic abilities and the paranormal are essentially the same thing. Question number 36. Do you believe in heaven or hell? And the answer is no, I don't. Yeah, I just think that they are fantasy. Question number 37. Do you believe in God or in a God? And again, the answer is no. Sorry. I wish God existed. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not so sure. But no, I don't believe in God. Question number 38. Did you ever believe in any of these? If so, why did you stop believing? Okay. So the question is, did I ever believe in God, the supernatural, or psychic abilities? And when did I stop believing? Or why did I stop believing? All right. So the answer is a clear yes. I did believe, as a true believer, in psychic abilities, the paranormal, and God. That was how I was raised. I was indoctrinated in these ideas, and I fell for these ideas hook, line, and sinker. So yes, I believed in the paranormal, psychic abilities, and I believed in God. Now, what happened? Why did I stop believing in God? Well, I think the main reason was because I found that there were a lot of contradictions within the beliefs. When people talk about, say, ghosts, and how they move through walls and how they can speak. Or, if you think carefully about these ideas, there's a lot of internal contradictions within them. There's a lot of unexplained ideas about, who these spirits and ghosts are, and are they souls, and where souls go, and why they do the things that they do. Why do souls possess other people, and why are there such things as haunted houses? And if you ask enough questions, the answers are completely inscrutable. Just completely inscrutable. There's no coherent, focused pattern of truth to follow, right? There's just claim after claim after claim after claim, and they just come like out of nowhere. It's like, and they don't really integrate. You can tell they're like patchwork, right? Oh, there's a contradiction here. We'll patch it with this idea. We'll patch it with that idea. If the whole smattering of ideas relating to psychic abilities and the paranormal and God even made any sense at all, it's just such a random patchwork of ideas. And what's funny is that everyone believes their own subset of this random set of ideas, right? Some people believe more like in astrology, and others are more into a religious focus, and there's just no coherence. People are into fairies, and some people are into nature spirits, and it's like some people are into angels, and it's like, hey, wait a second. It's almost like a subculture, but it's a splintered subculture of 40,000 different sets of ideas. They're trying to integrate them right into this spiritual world description, and they don't integrate. It's like unicorns and dragons and gods and ghosts and leprechauns, and they just don't fit together in any kind of coherent worldview, no kind of coherent understanding. And every fact you learn just seems to be unrelated to any other fact. Even the question of religion, so many facts, so many ideas in religion that make no sense at all. Just people walking on water. Like, what's that about? Turning water into wine. How does that connect to anything? It's if you think about it, it's just mind-boggling. There's not, like, science is great because like there's a, it starts with observations that anyone can observe. And then there's this methodical, logical underpinning of reason. It's a path, right? It's a pattern, and that path continues. I remember, all through middle school and high school and college, I was walking along that path, right? Like for math, for example, you go through arithmetic to algebra to geometry to trigonometry to calculus to differential equations to partial differential equations, to vectors to linear algebra. It's a progression, and each element builds on other elements in a non-contradictory way. And the same is true with science. You start back here with physics, mass and matter. You get into chemistry, and you get into energy, right? And then you go into potential and magnetic kinetic energy, and you get into magnetism, and then you get into waves and vibrations, and then you get into relativity, and it's just a progression, and it takes years to get through the progression, and it's logical and systematic, and there's no progression. There's very little progression and reason in questions and ideas about the supernatural. It's like a patchwork of ideas, and it's just so random. And also, there are no observables. There are absolutely no observables. There are tales about observables. There are stories about observables. This person 2,000 years ago observed something that they couldn't explain, right? But there are no observables. Oh, and the only observables that there are, what's kind of funny is that if there are observables, say in a supernatural interpretation, the observable is something that everyone can see, but the explanation behind it, there's like no evidence for it. It's just like a story that someone just pulled out of their imagination. And it explains the observable that everyone can see. It's just so bizarre. So anyway, that's why. That's why I fell out of it. It was because there's just no coherence in the ideas, number one. And there is numerous contradictions. So no coherence. The pieces in the puzzle just do not fit together. Or if they fit together, they fit together very sparingly. And they fit together in ways that don't provide any insight. And also the contradictions. Just the crazy contradictions. If you think for one moment, like God is one and three figures at the same time, that is nothing more than a contradiction. And here's the thing about contradictions. Contradictions are indicators of falsehood. I mean, how do you tell if someone is lying to you? Well, you notice contradictions in their story. That's how you know. And that's the best way to know that something is not true. So anyway, what's the next question? Can you dance? And the answer is, yeah, I can dance. Now, I have not been dancing for, I guess it's been like a month now. And this is a real struggle that I'm in right now. I've just been not going to Dance Tribe in Santa Barbara lately, and I've kind of been struggling with that. I need to dance more at home or find some kind of dancing venue local, or maybe go to San Luis Obispo. I know this Friday, or maybe this Saturday, or no, maybe this coming Sunday, there's a dance going on, so maybe I'll take the time out and go dancing. But can I dance? Yeah, I sure can. And I've taken all kinds of dance classes, like I did country western dance and salsa dance. I've taken a few waltz classes, and I've done tango and foxtrot, and I've done West Coast swing and East Coast swing, and all kinds of dancing. I just have really enjoyed dancing. It's been one of the thrills in my life over the last few years, and it's something I want to continue to do. Nowadays, I'm enthusiastic about ecstatic dance. I've got a lot of friends who are enjoying that kind of dancing too, and it's just a blast. Moving your body the way you want to move it in time and in space, and again, I'm just really loving it. So yes, I do know how to dance. Well, here's the thing about how to dance. Part of the reason, the big part of the reason that I'm interested in ecstatic dance is that there are no rules. Right? You can pretty much dance however you want to dance. You want to move however you want to. So there's nothing to memorize. There's no male lead in the dance. It's not very well structured. That's why I like ecstatic dance, is because, let me tell you, being the lead is kind of stressful. I remember country western dancing. it is a challenge to be a half beat ahead in the dance so that you can lead it. And also in dance, there's also a lot of moves, dance moves, and the challenge there is sort of memorizing all the dance moves and stringing them together in a way that makes sense and in a way that is entertaining for you and your partner. That's a challenge. It's a technical challenge, and kudos to those people who are able to persist in that particular kind of dance. And I'm sure if I gave it more attention, that I would be a very good dancer. But I just like moving my body. Really, just moving your body in dance is a thrill. And not only that, but moving your body to music that you enjoy is a super duper thrill. It really gets the emotions going, and it's a wonder and it's a joy, and it's something that I really want to do more often. So yes, I can dance. And not only can I dance, I'm willing to dance. I've got the courage to dance because I recognize the pleasure of dancing. Yeah, very good. All right, well, let's see. What's the next question? So the next question is, can you sing? And the one after that is, can you cook? Okay. So when I was growing up, I grew up pretty religious as a Jehovah's Witness, and I used to sing pretty often. We had songs that we would sing in the congregation, and it was really good training for me to get a good sense of how to use my voice, and I really liked it. It was quite enjoyable. It's really nice to sing in a group of people. And also I became familiar with a lot of songs as I was growing up. I'm sure I still have a lot of those Jehovah's Witness songbook songs in my mind. I don't necessarily bring them to mind very often, but I'm sure they're integrated in there just because kids are so great at memorizing stuff, particularly music and those tunes. I'm sure they're in there. And so that's really wonderful that I got that opportunity to sing with a group and find pleasure and enjoyment in it. And so, yeah, I think I can sing. Now, do I sing today? The answer is no, I really don't. But I'd like to get into it. I'm thinking about developing a podcast in the future where I might do a little bit of singing in it. And, or at least I'm hoping to develop my singing skills in a more methodical way in the future with this podcast idea that I've got. And I think I'm going to start doing this podcast and maybe even doing a little singing as early as next week. So I've already got some plans to develop my singing skills, and I'm really getting excited about that. I do have an interest in developing singing skills. I think singing is just this wonderful pleasure that you can enjoy yourself, and it's something that you can share and offer to others. There's something about the human voice which is captivating to other human beings. And I tell you, I admire singers. I've got a lot of memories in my mind about singers who I enjoy listening to, and not just professional singers, but regular, everyday people who sing like myself. Even I've got memories of people who do karaoke, and these memories are quite pleasurable and enjoyable to reflect upon. And it's just because I've enjoyed the experience of listening to people sing. And it's something that I want for myself. So, like I mentioned, I'm going to start this podcast where I might be doing some singing. And so I'm excited about it. I really can't wait. And in fact, recently I've honestly been trying to find hymns, like Celtic or Irish hymns that I can sing. and memorize during my podcast. So I really already started on my hunt to improving my singing ability. So that's cool. So the next question is, can I cook? And I guess I can and do. I mean, I'm a person who cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, you know, and I cook it out of my kitchen. I pack meals in my lunch bags. And in fact, today I'll be packing a lunch and packing a dinner because I've got a really busy day with my workout and going to my class at Allen Hancock College this evening. So yeah, I'll be putting together a meal. You know, what do I cook, you might ask? Well, I cook pasta and rice, and also I've been roasting potatoes recently, making French fries in the oven. In fact, for the last weekend, I had for breakfast French fries that I produced myself by baking the potatoes in my oven. I baked sweet potatoes and also russet potatoes. And so, as you can tell, as I'm relating this information to you, I make my own food. I make my own salads. I make soups. Yesterday or the day before, I had this wonderful squash soup. I didn't make it. It was just sort of an ingredient that it was pre-packaged, and I put it. I made a soup, some kind of a rice squash soup, and I really enjoyed that. You know, sometimes I think of my cooking as being really just assembling. And, you know, when I make a sandwich, I'm basically putting a slice of bread on top of, I'm putting, on top of my bread, I'm putting meat and tomatoes and lettuce. You know, it's assembly. And when I make a salad, it's also kind of like assembly. I'll throw some lettuce on a plate, and then I'll put maybe some vegetables on it, and then I'll throw some salad dressing and then maybe some spices. But I guess that's what cooking is, right? Cooking is assembly. And I don't know if I consider myself a cook. And, you know, here's the reason why. Because I like to try to eat vegan, I don't necessarily assemble or cook foods that have meat in them or cheese in them. And believe it or not, I associate cooking with cooking meat or using the frying pan a lot. The fact is, I just don't use the frying pan a lot. And in fact, I don't even use pots a lot. I don't use pots and frying pans. And can you imagine a cook not using pots and frying pans? For the most part, I just roast vegetables and I heat up food in my microwave. You know, food that has been sourced from cans or out of packages. So I don't find myself cutting a lot of onions or garlic because those aromatics aren't necessarily part of my regular food intake. You know, for the most part, I'm eating oatmeal and lentils and other beans. You know, I as a vegan, as a person who's trying to eat vegan, I just don't do all the things that are very characteristic of what chefs do. For example, I don't throw olive oil everywhere. You know, as a calorie counter, I pay strict attention to where I'm getting my calories. And I decided long ago that oils like olive oil just are too calorific to be using all the time. Honestly, I don't know how these chefs maintain their weight when they sling olive oil around like they do. Anyway, it's time for me to wrap things up. I just want to say, Emily, thank you for sharing this time with me. I hope you learned something about me and my outlook and my approach to life. I wish you a wonderful day today, and a wonderful week, and a wonderful month, and a wonderful year. And I look forward to spending some time with you in the future. And I just want to say, I really am grateful for having you and your presence in my life. And I'm just so pleased about all that you're doing. And my heart is just bursting with pride about you and all of your skills and abilities. And and everything that I learn about you every day. I love you. Peace.